Having the proper footwear and taking care of your feet for a through hike is so important that for those who have overlooked the matter or treated it too lightly, it has been a part of the issues or the issue that kept them from finishing strong and summiting Katahdin. Isaiah 52:7 says, "How beautiful upon the mountain are the feet of him who brings good news, who publishes peace, who brings good news of happiness, who publishes salvation, who says to Zion, your God reigns." Now that's a really great verse. How beautiful on the mountain. Now that's an amazing word picture to ponder. Earlier this week, I talked about the type of shoes that I intend to wear for my through hike attempt of the AT. And in that video, I gave a review of sorts of the shoes that I'm currently wearing. I can tell you from past experience that the footwear choice and foot care in particular are going to be a vital part of what I have to do to get through 2,200 miles of trail in Summit Katahdin. I've read dozens of trail accounts from the AT, the PCT, and the CDT, and foot issues or care take a role in every one of them. It's a matter that is important enough that if I don't get it right or I get lazy in my paying attention to my feet, something that simple could cause me enough problems elsewhere in my body or make it so painful to hike, well, that it could end my attempt. Not a pleasant thought, I grant you. The verse in Isaiah is still talking about feet, but what those feet are wearing is something profoundly more important than a pair of shoes, or sandals if that's your bag. What those feet are wearing is good news, or to put it more directly, the gospel. A message of peace, happiness, and ultimately salvation, all to remind the hearer that God reigns. So, Todd, are you implying that people could get the gospel wrong, share it in the wrong way, speak about the wrong peace, happiness, or salvation? I mean, peace is peace, and happiness is happiness, and salvation is salvation, right? You can't screw that up, can you? I'm not implying that at all. I'm just going to come out and say it plain. Yup, we can get that wrong sometimes. It's hard not to, given the fact that we are who we are and what we are, which is human and sinners. We tend to be a little bothered by the fact that we're fallible humans, and I certainly don't spend the majority of my opportunities announcing to the world, "Hello, sinner here, nice to meet you." Truth is, we have a tendency to do what Eve did in the garden. When asked by the serpent, did God really say? Well, Eve answered with all the correct information, but add a little something on. She said, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die." She got the die part right, and the tree right. What she added was the neither shall you touch it part. God didn't say that. He said, if you eat it, on that day you'll surely die. They could have picked the fruit and played baseball with it, after they invented baseball, of course, and it wouldn't have mattered. They could have pressed it and finger painted art for God's refrigerator, and it wouldn't have mattered. So why did Eve do that? Why do we do that? Throughout history, from as early as, I don't know, a month after Jesus was resurrected, folks have been adding to and taking away from the gospel that Jesus taught. Jesus is fine, but for complete salvation, there better be a circumcision in there. Well, Jesus is great, but if you eat that pork loin or that bacon, you're out of here. Jesus is the real deal, but you got to have additions from the law of yada, yada, yada. So why do we do that? Pride, for one. We just can't believe that we can't have any effect or control over any of this, or none of this depends on how good we are, how rich we are, how articulate we are, or any of these things. So we just feel the need to throw some secret sauce of our own liking into the recipe. So that way we can say we did something. Bonus points for the person can post in the comments who was quoted as saying, "God created man in his own image, and man has been trying to repay the favor ever since." Folks, that's pride. And unfortunately, it's a pretty accurate drawing of my silly self. And what's more, unfortunately, it's a false gospel. Maybe we're just afraid, too afraid to tell the truth without embellishing or gilding the lily, as my Irish ancestors might have said. We can't just dragnet this thing. Just the facts, ma'am. Yeah, I'm that kind of old. We figure the truth is too harsh for some folks, so we need to soften the blow a bit. We'll tell them everything when they get in the club and share the super secret handshake then. It reminds me of a story pastor and author Francis Chan used from his book, Letters to the Church. Seems he and his staff were interviewing a student from their student ministry about how good a job the church was doing with, church stuff. The student told them, rather pointedly, that he felt like he'd been lied to. He likened it to being given a new pair of ice skates. He loved the ice skates. He was really happy he'd gotten them. He'd go to the rink and use them from time to time and was getting pretty good at ice skating. Then suddenly, he was informed that he was on the competition ice hockey team and was expected to be at all these practices, all these games, play a position on the squad, and they were counting on him to pull his weight on the team. This would be, as another pastor and author, John Ortberg, labeled it, the gospel of the minimal requirements. That too is a false gospel. Ortberg contrasts the difference between orthodoxy, or right thinking, just believing the right things and you're in, fire insurance covered, heaven bound, woohoo, with orthopraxy, or right doing, the idea of actually doing what Jesus said to do. No additions and certainly no subtractions. Well, doggone it, here I am again. I'm a sorry sight. I gotta confess, I've approached evangelical moments in the past out of fear. Just let me tell them what I know. Keep the conversation to a minimum and please get me out of here. And that was then. What I find myself doing a lot of now is working with students and even an adult or few where I'm trying to help them clean up the mess of this minimal requirement gospel. This is one reason for the constant mantra of if you really believe what you say you believe, then it makes a difference in what you do, what you say, and how you live. It's one thing to believe that Jesus existed, was the Son of God, was crucified, buried, raised 3 days later. But it's quite another to say that out loud to others and then to also follow the directives of Jesus in every aspect of our daily lives and love and sacrifice for others as we do for ourselves. It's as though we look at Jesus and say, hey, I am more than willing to trade on your blood and mercy and grace that you provide at the cross so I can have heaven. But do not expect me to share any of that with the world or love and sacrifice so that they can see your greatness and worthiness to be praised. I've covered the minimal requirements here. Don't push for more. I wonder what would have happened if on my wedding day, as my bride-to-be and I are exchanging vows, I look at her and say, hey babe, what is the very least I can do and still call myself married to you? What are the minimum requirements so I can do just those and nothing more? Now, I suspect I'd still be waiting for Mrs. Right instead of celebrating a quarter century of marriage. Hikers will wear shoes. They need to be mindful of their feet. If they use the wrong shoe or neglect their feet, the consequences of that lack of judgment can be very painful. Now, I think I've got the shoe issue figured out, but I'm not going to take it for granted that somehow I slept at a Holiday Inn Express last night and now I'm a podiatrist. I'll need to be vigilant, mindful, humble, willing to do what must be done to ensure good foot health. When it comes to the good news, I'm best served to let the Word of God inform the Word of God and keep any awkward additions or subtractions out of that equation. I'd better be sure to minor on my own orthodoxy and major on my orthopraxy. If I'm actually doing what Jesus said for me to do, I'll be doing a whole lot more than just the minimum requirements. And here's a bonus. I get a taste of that eternity Jesus promised me in the right here and the right now. So, how's your orthopraxy? Is it outperforming your orthodoxy? Ready to put down that heavy load of trying to create a more palatable or easy to consume God for the masses? Here's hoping that when folks look at your feet, they can exclaim, beautiful. And until next Friday, take a hike and love somebody along the way. Hey, that's orthopraxy.